Hello, and welcome to this week's edition of Inside Today's Boardrooms from Diligent Institute, your source for the latest and greatest in corporate governance, all in 10 minutes. I'm your host, Lisa Edwards, and today I'm joined by Catie Hall, who is a director at PwC's Governance Insight Center. Catie, thanks for joining us today. Welcome to the show.
Thanks, Lisa. I'm excited to be here with you today.
So today we're going to be discussing one of the most anticipated reports of the year, which is PwC's annual Corporate Directors Survey. Catie, give us a little bit of background on this report. How many directors participated and what were some of the topics that you covered?
Sure. So this is it's hard to believe we've been doing this now for over 15 years, surveying U.S. public company directors. This year, over 500 participated.
I was a participant.
Congratulations. Thank you. And it's only because of all of these insights and all of these fantastic, I'm saying this, of course, directors that participate in this, that we're able to get the insights to bring back to the governance community. And so we ask a variety of questions. We ask questions about board effectiveness, board performance assessments, and that's where some of the fun highlights come out, but also current topics, AI, cyber, ESG, just to name a few others. And we typically get about a 60-40 male-female split across industries, generally pretty tenured directors and from pretty large companies as well.
That's great. Well, one of the things that I thought was kind of interesting was that according to the findings this year, despite the fact that seems to be a lot of concern about things like political divisiveness, immigration policy, economic inequality, over half the directors say their boards haven't discussed these issues in the past year. What do you make of that stat?
So yeah, this is an interesting one, and it's maybe surprising because in the run-up to an election year, a presidential election year here in the US, and then stepping back, it's not just the US, around the world, global elections are, very top of mind, I would say, for the director community. You'd anticipate a little bit more discussion around the boardroom. And those discussions may be happening, but that's not what directors are telling us. So, over half of directors had concerns with topics like political divisiveness, income inequality, inequity of opportunity, and a host of other social issues and the impact to their organizations. And at the same time, they're telling us, over half told us that they weren't having discussions at the boardroom level. So there's a few things, if I sort of peel back the layers here to think about. With social issues, there can be a few different discussions. One, there's the impact of those social issues to the organization, to the various stakeholders of the organization. So there's that piece. But then there's also considering how management is going to take a stance and how vocal they're going to be. And the board needs to be a part of those discussions. So, and it's also a topic, quite frankly, there's a lot of pressure because there are stakeholder groups for organizations that want a company to be vocal, and then there are those who will penalize companies for being vocal. So I understand that management and then vis-a-vis the board too are in a bit of a tricky situation, but at a minimum, we would anticipate that boards should be understanding from management. What is your process for evaluating the impact of these social issues?
Don't you think that many board members are also sort of been raised in a generation where you don't talk about politics, and this is a particularly toxic year for that. You don't know who's on what side of what issue, and also there's a workforce where my personal beliefs, I don't necessarily want to impose those on the workforce. Is it sort of, it's always been a little bit of a taboo subject?
Yeah, exactly. That is definitely a piece of it where, how much do you say, what do you say? But if you think back on recent geopolitical conflicts, like the Russian invasion of the Ukraine, and think about the fallout and sort of the impact from that on the business community, and really highlighting, and there's many other scenarios that we could use to bring into life, but there needs to be a discussion one way or the other, and boards and companies need to be prepared to respond to that.
Yeah. So another one that is, sort of an evergreen strategy for the last 12 to 18 months that we see coming up a lot is generative AI strategy. And we see that coming up a lot in our research at the Diligent Institute as well. What did your survey reveal about boards and AI at this moment?
Yeah, this is a hot topic. I know we're spending a lot of time talking about it, and you all are as well. So it's sort of a glass half full maybe not situation. Directors told us that they were very confident, about 2/3 are confident that their management team has the skill set to execute the company strategy when it comes to AI and Gen AI. So I think that's definitely very positive. But when the directors reflected one on their own skill sets, only about half felt that they had those and they received sufficient reporting, sufficient education opportunities, and that they really had a good oversight approach. So to me, boards are looking for more information, and this could be an expectation gap. It's not to say that management is not thinking about this, because I think most management teams at this point are thinking about the risks as well as the strategic opportunities that exist with AI. It's just how much of that is making it to the boardroom. And on top of that, putting myself in management shoes, you've got all this information and strategy and the risk side of it. How do you bring that in a meaningful way to the board that is right-sized reporting for the board? And quite frankly, the board doesn't necessarily have most boards don't have AI expertise. So how do you message that in a way that is digestible for the board?
Yeah, that's great. And I think one thing that has been a great resource to a lot of companies is companies like PwC bringing some expertise in to, do a presentation on what they're seeing. Because I think half of it is, boards can get educated on it, but it's sort of, what is everybody else doing? Do they have a policy? Do they have done a kind of inside the firewall version for themselves? And just understanding, what the landscape looks like, I think can be really helpful for boards.
Exactly. There are a few key questions and a few key places to start. A lot of the conversations, if I think back over the last year, we've had a lot of more education type conversations with the board. And now we're seeing it trickle down into, well, tactically, what you would be thinking about. Questions like, does management have a responsible use policy? Does the board have an oversight approach? What committee is going to be looking at this? Do we need to bring in a third party advisor? And getting tactical, and even seeing more conversations in the audit committee as the owner most of the time, day-to-day risk oversight, but also thinking about in terms of, what disclosures, what might we need to make at some point. So I think boards are definitely upskilling themselves and getting more savvy, but it is, I would say, a top topic of conversation.
Yeah, that's great. More stuff for the audit committee to do. I bet they're very psyched. Um, so, we have time for one more question, and maybe just give us a preview of any other noteworthy findings that you saw in there that we didn't get to cover today, and then we'll direct people to go read the whole thing themselves. But what else is in there that we didn't get to talk about?
A couple of things I want to highlight. One plays into the conversation we were just having about skill sets. We asked for the first time, what skill sets are you going to add to your board within the next 12 months? And surprisingly, for all the talk about cyber and ESG and AI, directors overwhelmingly told us they are looking for more, I would say, traditional skill sets. So it's financial, operational, industry. And the numbers around some of the other areas were really low. So to me, that highlights, again, directors are looking for broad business acumen, which definitely makes sense and really is a company by company decision. But I would say have a story around how you're accessing expertise. Is it deep dives with your management leader? Is it external conferences, third party advisors? Just have that. The other thing, and this is the sort of perennial favorite question that people like to point to, is just around how many directors you would want to see replaced. And almost half of directors want at least one peer replaced. 25%, which is an all-time high, want 2 or more replaced. And again, we have this question every year, but this year, when you really dig into the performance assessment data, there is definitely something, to be said about the effectiveness of the assessment and how it correlates to that number. Directors did tell us on the positive side that they are, have a lot of confidence in their lead independent director or board chair in leading that process, and that they do trust their boards to effectively assess performance. But the lack of refreshment maybe tells a different story. So stay tuned on that one.
Super interesting. Well, that is all the time that we have today. But as we mentioned, you can read the full report on PwC's Governance Insight Center. Catie, thank you so much.
Thank you, Lisa. It's great to be here.
And we will see all of you for our next episode of Inside Today's Boardroom. Thanks, everybody.